Would it make sense for Kansas to bring back Andy Kotelnicki? Would it make sense for him to come back to Kansas? We're going to break that all down on today's Locked On Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And on today's edition of the show, we're breaking down Andy Kotelnicki, the former offensive coordinator, now the offensive coordinator, and I guess interim head coach for the bowl game for Penn State. But he's out of a job at the end of this year, hasn't taken one yet. Would it make sense for a reunion? Would it make sense for Kansas to bring him back? Would it make sense for him to come back? We're going to break that all down, why it would or wouldn't make sense, and then finish up with a little bit of some of the latest in the portal that is really hurting KU volleyball. Let's start right here, because why am I bringing this up now? Well, it seems like there's at least been some. I know the other day there were a lot of people like on, I guess, social media going over, flight season. Like, it's one of the things that makes college football different than like the NFL, for instance, is flight tracking. And it's always kind of a fun, crazy thing that you see fans get into. And there was some flight tracking stuff of, did a private jet from Lawrence go to Happy Valley in Penn State? So that was kind of, prevalent. And I think just in general, like, there's enough dots that you could connect, not necessarily that Kansas is going to land him and that he would take the job, but there's enough dots that you could connect to at least be like, it would make sense to have a possible reunion. Now, there's some other reasons why it wouldn't make sense. We'll get into all those here. But I think the first part of this is for KU, especially if you're not going to spend the money to, for instance, buy out DK McDonald. Could you use that money to, like, is that one way to excite the fan base too, of saying, hey, I know a lot of people would like you to maybe pay that buyout. What if instead you use that money to, instead of subtract, add and bring on an Andy Kotelnicki? Who knows, right? And I don't know if the money even works there and everything, but like, could you have him come in? And I don't know the situation of some of the assistant coaches. I know some of them, they're like, contracts are up. Like, is there an opening? And the offensive line coach, could you do some obviously part of this is the idea that you would have to move around some of the different coaches, and that would make it a hurdle, right? And I think in general, the first response would be, okay, Jim Zebrowski and Matt Lubick are your co-offensive coordinators, and they just got promoted to that job. Are they really going to take a demotion? And I think it all depends how you term it. For one, I mean, this is a make or break year for Kansas, so you're going to have to kind of check egos at the door. Two, is there a chance that, and I don't know this for a fact, so I have no idea, is there a chance that Jim Zebrowski prefers just being the quarterback's coach than the offensive coordinator anyway? I don't know the answer to that, but like, he was the quarterback coach for a while with KU. I'm sure he could have left for an offensive coordinator job elsewhere. So I don't know. Maybe he does want to be the offense coordinator, right? Could you make him co-offensive coordinator with Andy Kotelnicki? What would that mean? And like, at the end of the day, does the title matter if the money's there? What if you said, hey, Jim Zebrowski, you're going to go back to just being the quarterback's coach. Matt Lubick, you'll stay on as the tight ends coach, or we'll move you to a different position and have Kotelnicki back at tight ends where he was before. But Kotelnicki, maybe you could have him as the offensive line or whatever it is to make it work. And if you're changing the titles for Zebrowski and Lubick from co-offensive coordinator to just their position coach, but you keep paying them the same amount of money they were making last year, is there as big of a fuss? I don't know. Again, that's something that Lance Leipold will have a better idea of, right? And I think it's clear when you look back, statistically, KU had their best offenses with Kotelnicki as opposed to without him, right? So 2021, which was the first year of the Leipold era, but was really year zero with how late they took over. If you just look at ESPN FPI offensive efficiency, Kansas finished 91st that year. And then immediately after that, when they actually got a full offseason for the first time with Andy Kotelnicki in this offense, it was amazing, the turnaround. I mean, they became an elite offense. They were 8th in the country in offensive efficiency in 2022. They were 7th in the country in offensive efficiency in 2023. Then he leaves. He goes to Penn State in 2024. Kansas still good, but they drop a bit. They go from 8th to 7th to then dropping a tad to 16th. And then 2025, this past year, they're 32nd. I've said this before. I do think the drop from 7th to 16th was, I think, dropping from Kotelniki to Grimes. I think the drop this year from 16th to 32nd, I actually like Zebrowski as a play caller better than Grimes, but the difference is you didn't have like a Devin Neal. You lost some key players in the offensive line. So it was kind of a combination of things why you dropped these last 2 years, but still. In the meantime, over in 2024, Kotelniki had Penn State finishing 5th in the country in offensive efficiency on ESPN FPI. This year, they were 26th. So, you're kind of taking a step backwards, but is it just as easy to say as, hey, your quarterback who was supposed to be in the Heisman race this year ended up being out for the season with an injury and wasn't playing too well before that, and then your head coach was fired in season? There's all sorts of drama to deal with. And even then, even with all of those excuses you could point to, Kotelniki's offense was still ranked higher than at Kansas this year, right? And again, all of these things correlate to player personnel and whatnot, but look at what Kansas could have this upcoming season in 2026, like personnel wise. And one of the things that I look saying, and again, it depends who gets picked at quarterback, but I think Isaiah Marshall is the best runner and has the most explosiveness on the ground with his legs. David McComb, I think, is a really underrated runner. And Cole Ballard is kind of a gritty runner who is a good runner in kind of a different way. Regardless of what you're looking at there, I feel like you have legs from the quarterback position with a little more unproven in the passing game from no matter who you pick. Then you look at, for KU, not having a ton of returning talent at the receiver position. Like, it makes sense to me for this to go back to more of a ground and pound type team who's running more option, who's running the ball a good amount of time. And if you can get Andy Kotelnicki back, then you're talking about getting the gang back together with Kotelnicki, Jim Zebrowski, and Matt Lubick. And it's not just that Kansas went from, Kotelnicki to Jeff Grimes between 2023 to 2024. That same offseason, you also lost Matt Lubick to Nevada. And so from that perspective, it's not just that you'd have the ability to, bring Kotelnicki back. It's that you'd have a chance to have the full gang back together for when this was the most well-oiled machine on the offensive end of the ball that we've seen during the Lance Leipold era, right? And again, tight ends were the position that Kotelnicki coached. That's what Lubick is coaching. Again, do you make some shuffling? Lubick has some past coaching more so at the receiver positions, right? Or do you have, I don't know, if for instance, if Darryl Ogpalsa, if his contract is up, do you put Kotelnicki's offensive line if you were to make this work, right? And this is all hypothetical, and I don't know how this all works and in terms of the contracts and who has what and who they're going to renew and everything. But I think there's ways that you could at least make it work. Like, I don't think if your biggest challenge is, well, how would Jim Zebrowski take? Again, this is football. This is a business. This is $1 million business, and this is a make or break year. If some guys' egos have to get checked at the door, that's how it is to try to get the best results possible here, right? And I like Jim Zebrowski and everything. So if you want to keep him as co-offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach and bring Kotelnicki, like, whatever you have to do to make this work, I think, to me, it makes a lot of sense. And if that involves naming Kotelnicki the head coach in waiting, whatever, man. I mean, Lance Leipold is 61 years old. It's a different sport, but like Rick Pitino's 73 and he's still coaching. So who knows if Leipold is going to coach and has over a decade left, or if he has a couple of years left, right? Like, nothing would be crazy at this point. And so if you're naming a guy head coach in waiting, it at least makes it feel like you have coverage in the future. And here's the big thing. I've seen so many times where a head coach in waiting or the coach was given that tag and didn't actually end up being the head coach. The one that I always think of first when I think of this is Will Muschamp. He was the defensive coordinator. He was like at the time, he was the up-and-comer defensive coordinator, was hired to Texas with Mac Brown. He got named head coach in waiting. Ended up leaving before then for the, was it the job at Florida, or did he have the South Carolina job first? I can't remember. I think it was the Florida job. To be the head coach there because he was done waiting. If we're being honest, if everything goes well and they have a good enough offense, Kotelniki will get a head coaching job somewhere else, and he won't even, he'll take that job before it ends up happening. So, like, I wouldn't be worried about tying yourself down with that. If that's to get the deal across the line, get it done. And right now, from the Kotelniki perspective, like, okay, you don't have a job right now. Maybe he'll end up with another one lined up. But if you go back to Kansas, and I don't know, maybe there were burnt bridges and stuff like that, but there's too many millions of dollars and opportunities here to just say no to an opportunity. If you do go right back to Kansas, and like he was already at the top of, obviously he got the Penn State job off of what he did at Kansas's first go around. Able to repeat that success at Kansas now, where you'll be able to future jobs point to and say, hey, look, I was there for these years. We were great on offense. I left. They got worse. I came back. We got good again. That's a heck of a resume booster if you're Kotelniki. So let's get to why it might not make sense for him and for Kansas. We'll get to that next and a little bit on KU volleyball's transfer exodus on Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Ever feel like money just disappears each month? It happens fast. A few subscriptions here, an impulse buy there, especially during the holiday season. Suddenly the numbers in your bank account don't match the numbers in your head. Rocket Money helps you get clarity, track every dollar, and stay in control of your finances, because managing your money shouldn't feel like a second job. Rocket Money does the heavy lifting for you so you can save money and stress less. See all your spending on one dashboard. It makes it easier to understand where your money is going. Plus, they have bill alerts, they have spending notifications. They help you catch those small things before they turn into the big expenses. Take control of your finances and cancel your unwanted subscriptions with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That is rocketmoney.com/lockedon, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Thanks again for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks, making us your first listen every day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. You can actually take it up a level and go ad free here. Visit lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. You can join the Everydayer Club with no interruptions, members only Discord access, and more ad free, all for just $5 a month, $50 a year. Again, hit up lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. That link will be available in the show notes as well. All right, so KU in a position where they don't have an open offensive coordinator spot. Andy Kotelnicki doesn't have a job. And I think that is the first hurdle. Like I said earlier, like to me, if you have to do some shuffling, you do some shuffling. This is college sports is basically minor league sports at this point in time. It's basically professional sports, right? Just to a slightly lesser degree than, say, the NFL. That is the nature of the beast, and that is why these guys are getting paid hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars, right? And so if you have an opportunity to make yourself better, you take it, right? And that's the thing here. But yes, it would lead to some uncomfortable conversations. It might lead to maybe a coach leaving or something like that. That is something that you kind of have to deal with. The other part of this is, of course, the money aspect. Like Andy Kotelnicki, he's making really good money at Penn State. And for Kansas to put together a competitive offer is probably going to have to be good money. And Kansas, from everything that was kind of out there, it sounded like they made a really, really competitive offer when he was going to Penn State to try to keep him around. And maybe that leads to some burnt bridges. But I guess that gives me the hope at the very least that, like, they can get the funding there. Now, again, this is something that we've brought up with the DK McDonald stuff. If Kansas is using a big amount of money to bring on Andy Kotelnicki, what does that mean in terms of the available spend on the portal? Like, for instance, would you rather have Andy Kotelnicki as offensive coordinator and maybe, I don't know, a couple like more middle tier, like average starters? Or not have Andy Kotelnicki and be able to bring on a receiver who was all conference at a mid-major and a running back who had like 900, 1,000 yards last season as his previous stop. Like, what would you rather do, right? And that's something that, again, you have to kind of take into account a lot of these different things and kind of put it all together, right? Beyond that, some other reasons it wouldn't make sense, like, Are we over exaggerating the impact here? I mean, Penn State just went 6-6, which, you know, and you could say 26th in offensive efficiency. That wasn't that different than the 32nd from KU. And also from a standpoint, like, what does Andy Kotelnicki look like with internally recruited guys? Because to this point, what he did at KU his first stretch was with Les Miles guys who ended up being a lot of diamonds in the roughs there. And what he did at Penn State were Franklin's guys who were 4 and 5 star recruits a lot of times. What does that mean for now that you'd be coming over to what feels like right now a little bit more of a depleted roster? That could just be because it's a younger roster, so it has a little more unknowns to it. So that is something you have to measure, right? Again, especially measured against what the costly sum would probably be to bring him back. And then the other part of it is, has all been forgiven. Like, what is the relationship like there with Lance Leipold and Andy Kotelnicki? What is the relationship like there with the KU athletic department and Andy Kotelnicki, the donors and Andy Kotelnicki, right? Those are all fair questions that I don't have the answer to. Might be great, right? Time heals all wounds, so who knows? You'd also have to do the shuffling of the different coaches, and what would that mean with, would you have to pay any more buyouts? Is that adding to the money that you're kind of spending there? And then even though it would be a familiar coach, it still would be your 4th offensive coordinator in 4 years, albeit really 3rd in 4 years, but it would be your 4th different guy. Like, I don't know, in a weird way for a lot of the young players, like, if you joined the team in 2024 or later, which is a lot of the team in 2026, you wouldn't have been around when Kotelniki was the offensive coordinator. So realistically, it is your 4th offensive coordinator, your 3rd in 3 years or whatever. And that would be a challenge in its own, even though it would be a familiar one. Now, all of this to say is a lot of those things are kind of nitpicking, to say the least. And to me, this would be a home run hire if you could do it. It'd be a home run hire on the field. I think Kotelniki, I still think very highly of him as an offensive coordinator. I think it would be a home run in terms of fan support. And as you're going into a season in which you're going to have probably reduced capacity because of the construction going on, you are coming off back-to-back 5 and 7 seasons where, the fan support is waning at least a little bit here, right? It's not back to where it was in the 2010s, but it's not quite as high as it was after, say, 2022 or 2023 right now. This will be a way to kind of have a little bit of a win back. And that's not how you should make every hire. So it shouldn't be the be-all, end-all, right? You don't win in the press conference, but it feels like this would win on the field and the press conference. And so I think this would be a really smart move if KU could make it, but obviously there's a lot of people that have to say yes to this. And it's not just Kansas having to say yes. It's not just Lance Leipold having to say yes. It's not just moving around some of the assistant coaches who have to say yes. It's Andy Kotelnicki has to say yes. It's the money has to be right. It's the situation has to be there. It's other schools have to not have offered Kotelnicki a head coaching or an offensive coordinator job. It's him deciding, hey, I'll take this job over that job, right? There's a lot of decisions that have to come into this, but point being, if Kansas can get it done, it would be a home run to bring him back. All right, let's finish up here with a little latest portal moves for KU football and KU volleyball. This is Locked On Jayhawks. This episode of the show is brought to you by Wayfair. The holidays always show up faster than we expect, and if you're still putting together gifts, last-minute decor, or getting your home ready for guests, Wayfair has you covered. Whether you need a quick room refresh, new bedding, or those final seasonal touches, Wayfair makes it easy to get what you need fast. Wayfair is truly your one-stop shop for everything home, decor, furniture, kitchen essentials, gifts for every style and every budget. It's all delivered quickly and easily. Great for picking out a Christmas gift too, right? Like if you're trying to get something for somebody, you can probably find something pretty good on Wayfair. I mean, the selection's huge. Bedding, decor, kitchen gear, kids' room updates. You can find everything in one place, right? Wayfair items you order will instantly refresh your space without a big project. Get last-minute hosting essentials, gifts for all your loved ones, and decor to celebrate the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now. Shop all things home. That's wayfair.com, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thanks again for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks. You can join the Everydayer Club, and thank you for being a everydayer who makes it your first listen every day. Don't forget you can check out Locked On College Basketball or Locked On College Football for your second listen every day. All right, some quick touching on some of the latest KU football transfer losses since we've last spoken about it. We're actually on Friday's show going to dive deeper into all of these latest losses. Jameel Croft, Logan Brantley, Graydon Grimes, Laquan Robinson. If you are an everydayer, you caught our episode last week about John Kamara leaving. Lyric Rawls left, so we had an episode about that and some of the players staying. And those are the bigger losses. These ones, again, Croft, probably not projected to be on the 2 deep. Brantley would have been close. Graydon Grimes, again, not somebody projected on the 2 deep. And then Laquan Robinson, I guess right now he would be because they don't have a lot of safeties, but I don't know if, when all is said and done with roster movement, he would have been. So not the biggest there, but we will get into where that leaves KU on Friday's episode. And we're going to break down what the roster looks like, what the depth chart could look like right now, a lot of these different positions before the portal opens up on, I think it's January 2nd, coming up on, I think that's a Friday at the beginning of January. Beyond that, KU volleyball has been kind of decimated by the transfer portal. So, Jovana Zelenovic, who was, a stud, 6'7" from Serbia, had a great freshman year, all Big 12 player for KU. She entered the transfer portal, so that was a big loss for KU. Selena Laban entered the transfer portal and already announced, I think she's going to Florida, so that one hurts. Those are 2 of your biggest pin players on the outside. You also lose a couple others, notably Katie Dalton, your starting setter, who made a quick decision. She's going to be going to Creighton. So a lot of quick losses for KU. Molly McCarthy, Brinker. They did add one, Olivia Hasbrook, who really good server from Ohio State, good defender, good libero, really good passing numbers in volleyball. There's a scale of up to 3 that you give basically players on their passing, which is basically, in serve receive, like, do you have, after your pass, did the setter have 1, 2, or 3 options? Essentially, this is boiled down like simplicity to get the ball to, right? And you want it to be 3. Best passers are usually 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, somewhere in that range. She was at the lower end of that. I think she was like 2.2 or something, which is a good number. So good passer, good dig numbers, good serving numbers. I don't know if she'll be the libero or if she'll be somebody who just comes in to be a DS and server, but either way, I like that ad for KU. But, this is unfortunate because KU had a really good year in year 1 under Matt Ulmer, right? You make the Sweet 16, you have this really young team, but now, unfortunately, this really young team is transferring away. And you can understand some of it, right? Like, some of these players didn't pick Matt Ulmer, they picked Ray Bouchard. And I don't know if this is a little bit of KU, making some way for some young players, right? They've got a 6-player recruiting class coming in that seem to be very well recruited. And I think they have one of the best players in the country at one of the pin positions coming in. So that certainly is going to challenge things. And I think a little more in women's volleyball than maybe some other sports, like freshmen will come in and just like be the best player right away, right? It's not the same as like maybe a football where it's like, okay, it's going to take them a year or 2, or they'll rotate in this year. No, like you could come in and be the best player right away. They still do have some good returners though. And I would imagine some of the spots that are open, they're going to be able to bring in some good transfer hauls or maybe some good international hauls, just like they did this past offseason. It just does suck that it's like, oh, you had all this like this good stuff that happened with young players that could come back and grow in the system, and now they're gone. But I think that's just kind of the nature of the beast now in college sports. You have to be able to retool. And I'm expecting Matt Ulmer to. I think he's a really good head coach, and I think he'll be able to. And I think the recruiting class they have coming in is going to be really good for KU. So I still have very high expectations for where this program is going to be and where it's going to be next season, but definitely going to be some new faces. Reese Patak is going to be back, some other returners, but opportunity in the transfer portal, to say the least, for KU women's volleyball off a Sweet 16 appearance. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And if you need a last-minute holiday gift or someone keeps asking what you want, make it easy. Ask for the Everydayer Club. Ad-free episodes of the show, exclusive Discord server access, and more subscriptions can be gifted through our link over at lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer. And we'll see you tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Jayhawks, talking a little more KU football, all the latest transfer portal losses, where it has the biggest hits, what the KU football roster looks like, what the depth chart looks like, where they need to add more in the portal when things do open up. And we'll see you then right here on LOJ.